Yeah, fake it till you make it is so key. And there's a fine line between faking it and making it. Like it's not like you cross some threshold,
There's been
you've
lots
made
of
it, right?
failure that's public and failure that's been private. But lots of it, let's just say, and I just wish that somebody had told me that.
I think those that maybe don't see the success in their career are unwilling to make some of those big leaps or changes or being able to think of a bigger picture.
How can a set of skills lead you down the path to success? That's what we're setting out to answer on the EdUp Canada podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sangster. Join me as we unpack how leaders around the world have taken training and skills and turned that into a lasting career. Now let's learn together. Welcome back to the EdUp Canada podcast, where we take time to interview industry leaders, career professionals, and generally interesting people to talk about their careers, mistakes made, and to hear advice on how making a simple change can change a career path or a family's future. For the first time in our series, we're going to be doing a two-part series with three professionals who need no introduction other than Ginny Roth, Marlene Floyd, and Kathleen Monk. These three leaders have impacted politics, communities, and people, and I'm delighted to have them join us today and also to call all three friends. In today's podcast, we'll talk about their own experiences, their lessons learned, and have them share some thoughts on the challenges and opportunity facing education in Canada. And in the next edition, we're going to have a lively discussion on the return of Parliament in Canada and what Canadians should expect. So with that in mind, ladies, welcome. We'll jump right in because we haven't done this with three people. We'll ask some questions and I'll kind of guide them as we go here, but we're going to get right in with a fun question about, in your own career paths, what's the greatest lesson that you have learned in your careers that you wish that you knew when you started? And Marlene, you dialed in last, so you're first.
I've been thinking about this question as you sent us a couple of notes of what it was and what I wish I had known when I was starting out my career. If we were in person and not recording this, I might have a different word, is don't be a jerk. This has been the life lesson that I have learned. My reputation and your reputation is what will precede you in every situation for the rest of your life. And how you interact with people, how you make them feel, how you leave those conversations, that's what they're going to remember about you. And I think and I cringe at some of my interactions I might have had earlier in my career. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned that I've had from that. And just maturity and growth, I think, is part of that as well. But your reputation and how you make people feel and how they feel about you, you can't make a second impression. And I think that that has been probably one of the strengths that I've had in my career is I hope people don't see me as being difficult. And I think I've worked on that over the years, but that would be my biggest lesson. There's my little bit of spiciness. Usually Mike knows me. I tend to be pretty blunt and direct, but that's my big lesson learned.
Well, it's an interesting one because it goes back to all four of us have been involved in politics. And in that, if you do that, you end up with big jobs at young ages. And sometimes you are a jerk. I look back on some things I've done. So Kathleen, you're nodding. Do you have something to share on this one?
Well, I agree with Marlene completely. It is really, your reputation and how you make people feel. I mean, that's a basic tenet of good communication too and good relationship building. But what I would have wanted to know when I was starting out in my career is just a simple phrase. It's all going to work out. It's all going to be okay. Really, it really is. Because, we've all had big jobs and some of them have been really hard. And I fretted a lot. I worried a lot about that news piece I was producing or that documentary that didn't have the right shot or what this policy rollout or how come I lost a campaign or being a spokesperson. That's really a tough job at times. And did I say the right thing? Did I convey the right message? And there's been lots of failure that's public and failure that's been private. But lots of it, let's just say, and I just wish that somebody had told me that it's all going to work out. It's not going to be a straight line. It won't all be perfect, but don't dwell so much on your failures because success will come, especially if you're a hard worker and you're always curious. And so that's what I would tell the younger me, like, it's all going to work out. Even if it doesn't work out, fake it till you make it, baby.
It's the motto, Kathleen. That's my motto.
It reminds me, there's a great video out there with Tom Hanks, and somebody asked him for his advice, and he said, "This too shall pass. You think you're on top of the world, this too shall pass. You think you're at the bottom of the world, this too shall pass." And it's very similar. Jenny, any thoughts?
Yeah, fake it till you make it is so key. And there's a fine line between faking it and making it. Like, it's not like you cross some threshold and you've made it, right? And maybe like along the same lines, I'll give two quickly. One that I learned early, and I'm very grateful I learned early, and one that it took me a little bit longer. The early one was decisions are made by those who show up. That's true in politics. That's true in your career. Like, be in the room, be in the nomination meeting where your vote might be the one vote that counts, be in the campaign office late. Like, all those, just being there, you get to make the decision. It's so fun to get to make the decision or influence the decision. And I'm really grateful someone told me that really, really early in my career, and it made it, I think, a big difference. And the second one is there's no secret room of people who are way smarter than you. There might be people with more experience than you. They might be wiser and have more wisdom. But I think I always thought, like, oh no, like one day I'll get to the really big room where like the big, smart, important decisions are being made. And it's just, and then you just keep realizing there's no wizard behind the curtain. It's just, we're all just faking it till we make it. And knowing that and being able to internalize that can give you a lot of confidence young. And it's hard. Like, you can't buy that confidence or make it up. But if you keep trying to remind yourself of that, I think it can make a big difference.
I had Goldie Hyder on recently, and we got talking about mentors and people who had affected our lives. And we talked about someone that well, Marlene, Mike Robinson. And he always said, beware the people in the back of the room who say nothing and leave the room and make decisions. Similar kind of thing. Be in the room, be present, be part of it, and you amaze what can happen. So I'm going to jump on to another topic here right away about a skill that you might think, or that others would think is underrated, but led to your own personal successes. And maybe a minute each, and we'll start with you, Kathleen, about what is that one skill that's led to your success? Maybe it's unique, maybe it's not.
Critical thinking, asking tough questions. Hands down, that's the skill that I would look for in an employee, and that I'm grateful that I developed at an earlier age, mainly because we argued at my dinner table when I was young, living with my parents. And then I actually went off to Trent University to do a course in cultural studies, which is essentially critical thinking. And my parents mocked me for my degree at the time, but actually it served me well in journalism, it served me well in politics, and now in consulting. It's that ability to listen, to be curious, to think critically about an issue and ask the right questions. So that's what I think the skill that people should try to develop, no matter what sector of the industry you're in, right? Critical thinking can be happening anywhere, on a job site, in constructions, in a long-term care home. But if you're thinking critically, you'll keep your patients safe, or you'll keep your construction site, working and moving along.
So we're talking to professionals. We're also talking to students on this podcast. So I think that's a very valuable one about things you can learn. So with that, Ginny, do you have a thought?
So that was going to be mine. And I think rather than making up a new one, I'll just add like that lifelong learning and like the reading and the being curious. I mean, read fiction, like consuming information and then applying that in a savvy way to think critically about the world around you is so important and like such a difference maker in a career, I think.
Marlene?
Mine was going to be adaptability and willingness to adapt. But when I think of it from a skill and why it's been success, maybe it's not my ability to adapt. For others that maybe not have seen growth in their careers is because they were unwilling to adapt, right? And I think those are two different kind of options. Like, things aren't a linear line, and life has lots of turns and you need to pivot on a quick notice. And I think being able and willing to be adaptable, to change, to come at things with critical thinking, to be willing to test your opinions, to be wrong, to be right, to find somewhere in the middle. I think those are really the skills that I think have set me apart in my career. But also I think it goes to that the liberal arts training that we all seem to have gone through, which is that willingness to learn and to accept that nothing is status quo, that everything is constantly changing in our lives and that we have to go along with it. And I think those that maybe don't see the success in their career are unwilling to make some of those big leaps or changes, or being able to think of a bigger picture. But yeah, that's adaptability.
I asked the three of you to join us for a couple of unique reasons, not only because I respect all of you and think you're great leaders. Kathleen, you're running a smaller consulting business, consulting, working with large employers. Ginny, you are in now what is Crestview Strategies, a large employer and growing by the week by the looks of the announcements I see online. And Marlene, you're in one of the largest companies in North America, in Microsoft, in the world. So I'm wondering, when it comes to education, is there a skill set or is there something that you think employers, because you all work with large employers and small employers, is there a skill set? Is there something you think governments should be tasking the education sector to be doing a better job at training for? And I'll see, Marlene, I'll put you on the spot because I know you've got a little more experience working in the education sector too with some boards you're on.
It's hard to say like, hey, these are the skills that, everyone needs. I think we underestimate the importance of soft skills and how I can have hard skills. I can have IT skills. I can learn how to code. I can be the best coder in the world. But if I can't work in a team environment, if I can't be adaptable, if I don't have critical thinking, then I'm not going to be successful in my career or in a business or an organization because I can't play well with others, right? And I think we really underestimate or don't put value into those soft skills enough. They're hard to teach though, and that comes with life and it comes with experience, but it also comes with that willingness, as we've all talked about, of creative thinking, of being able to see beyond yourself and willing to accept the opinions of others. I could sit here as an IT company and say, yeah, we need to skill up more IT people. That would be a big piece. But really what I look for in my team members and when I'm hiring is this going to work with the team? I want a diverse team of people. We know diverse teams work well together. I don't want all the same type of individual in my team, but I need folks that are going to be able to work well together, that are going to have these soft skills, that are going to learn how to work through conflict, that are going to be able to be creative and amplify the work of others on their team, because that's where you see success, is where you're not just amplifying yourself, but you're amplifying the others on your team. And those are skills that I think we could do a better job of preparing people for the workforce and that teamwork environment, and less focused on those like, I need you to be able to do X, Y, and Z hard skill.
I'm going to throw it over to Kathleen now, because it's a different perspective from where you work every day, I think.
Yeah, I would build on a lot, though I agree with everything that Marlene said. I just build on it and maybe make it simpler in the sense of like, I think listening is really important. Like I want to find a listener. I want someone who's got the empathy, who can understand what's happening in their team. Having the skill of empathy is helpful because then it helps you to understand different audiences, right? To be able to jump into, and that helps you to become a better communicator. It helps you to build better ideas, just sharing things with folks. So I think that I would look for those kind of skills. How you build them, I can only speak to my experience, certainly with the teams I've managed in the past, but I'll speak more specifically for my own children, right? And that's where I try to build those skills of empathy and listening. And that's just exposing them to different environments, right? Giving them challenges, getting them out in the world, and forcing them to have some courage, some curiosity, and to be brave where they can. So I think those are the things that I would look for if I was hiring next time. The skills you can teach.
That's a good point, Kathleen. Yeah.
Yep. Ginny?
Yeah, maybe I'll build on Kathleen a bit. And it's kind of like further down the line from critical thinking. You could do all that in your head. If you can't express it verbally and in writing well, it sort of doesn't matter, right? And I've done a lot of media, I think all three of us have, talking to the media and trying to get an argument across on behalf of our clients or our political parties or whatever. And recently I've been writing a column more frequently. And the thing about writing an argument is you can't hide. Your argument has to be strong. And it reminded me that like it's also the nature of the work I do for clients every day and what I look for in people I hire. The ability to make a strong argument, to empathize and see what the counter argument might be from people who would make the opposite point, to foresee that, to get ahead of that argument, and just articulate a strong perspective in writing clearly. And the challenge with post-secondary is writing in an academic environment is very different from writing for business or in a business environment or even a political environment where you have to be so much clearer, so much more concise. And so a lot of what we spend time on is kind of transitioning people out of an academic writing environment into a business writing environment. And it usually happens pretty quickly, but it takes some training. And I think post-secondary could do, or the education universe in general could do a better job of training people on that earlier, or when they first start thinking about their careers.
Jenny, +1 on that, right? Like I read some stuff every once in a while and it amazes me of just an inability to be succinct, to be brief. I read it and I was like, what is the point of this? Like, what do you want me to take away from your email, from your briefing note? I do not know. And like, just tell me what I need to know here and be brief, be succinct, and be out.
Kathleen wants to jump in here, I think.
Well, dude, I agree completely. And actually, one of the training grounds that is good for this, although I'm sure you'll all groan when I say this, is actually question period. Having to write a question in 30 seconds or less, it's often somewhere between 75 to 100 words. That economy of language to make a point still factual and to get it across. So yeah, I completely agree. Get in, get out, be clear, because that's generous to your audience, right? That's generous to whoever's reading your stuff. And that's what you want them to understand what you're saying.
My favorite is just put it up front. Like, what's my ask? Put it at the top. Put it at the top.
One of my favorite human beings, General Rick Hillier, who's going to be on here on the podcast in a couple of months. And General Hillier, when he was running Canada's military, had a 5-slide rule. And if you put a 6th slide up, he walked out of the room. And he was running the mission in Afghanistan, or he was running Canada's military. And if you couldn't get it across in 5 slides, and I also know he hated PowerPoint, but get it across really fast. Tell me the story. It's a really, really good advice to people on how to get things done. Marlene knows me a bit, and Ginny from my days at TELUS too. We had a couple of great ones, but the one there I loved was we embrace change. So get people, hire people, train people that are willing to change, are willing to look at things differently, because I don't think we do enough of that. But we're not here to hear my views today. We're here to hear from you guys. So I'd like to just pivot off here. We're going to have a second podcast today. We're going to interview, after we're done here, we're going to record a little bit more about the upcoming Parliament session and what's going on with international students and education. But before that, you've all in your life mentored and had mentors. I'm going to go to you, Kathleen, and put you on the spot first to talk about a great mentor and maybe a couple of minutes each on just what is that mentor and how they impacted your life. You don't have to name them, but I think it's important for people to realize that we talked about it earlier about don't be a jerk. Be a mentor too. You can be a mentor every day and not even realize you're being one. And I bet you we all had them that we didn't know they were our mentors.
That's right. And that was one point that I wanted to make, Michael, is just that I don't think the term was bantied, and now I'm going to show my age a little bit, but it wasn't bantied around as much as it is now. Like, we weren't told, go out in your career and find a mentor, but we did have them. They just weren't labeled as such, I would say. So going back through my career, I would say probably, and I'm happy to name her, it's Jane Houghton, who was a major broadcaster in Toronto, first news editor, I believe, at Q107, and then went on to have a show on the Women's Television Network. And she took a chance on me. I was green. I did not deserve the job. I got to be her television producer, and I worked really hard. Everybody around her wanted me to be fired, probably with good reason. But she kept me, and she taught me so much. She taught me to bring good ideas to the table, to defend them fiercely, to defend them with my facts, and has always looked out for me. And I'm really grateful for that.
Very helpful. Jenny?
Well, Michael, you'll laugh because my mentor is a good mutual friend of ours. But to your point about Kathleen, about something they don't even know, I met my now business partner, Mark Spiro, when I was a really young campaigner on a political campaign, and he was leading the campaign. I was an intern, and I know for a fact he doesn't remember this, but it just speaks to his character. And in my first week, someone was a real jerk to me, to the point about being a jerk, by email. And I mentioned it to someone in passing. I was not really complaining about it, but that person somehow got back to Mark. And he kind of hauled me into his office. And honestly, I thought I was going to get yelled at. And he just said, no one treats anyone like that on my campaigns. And if that happens, come again, you come straight to me. And that was the environment he created. It was like no jerks allowed, basically. And it instilled inadvertently in me a loyalty towards him. He practices that loyalty to his team. And it's something that good people in politics learn early, right? Like, you have to be loyal to your team, especially when you lose frequently in politics. I've been on a lot of losing campaigns. And since then, now we're in business together. And I just learned a lot of lessons from him that I don't even know he was teaching. He's taught me what the difference between being a manager and being a leader, right? Like, managing is important. You have to manage against deadlines and outcomes. And that's really, really important. But that's not really what leading is. Leading is inspiring a team to be the best and work together. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that I got to know him. I also would say I think a lot of women look for female mentors, and that's just never been. I've been around a lot of men in politics, and I'm fortunate that I've been around men who are great mentors to me, despite our different genders.
I'm going to have a hard time publishing this podcast now with nice things being said about Mark Spiro, one of my favorite human beings. So I'm really glad to hear you say that, because he is one of the most decent human beings, and he would hate someone saying that about him. Gruff but lovable Mark Spiro. So Marlene?
So picking up on something that Kathleen said, because I think people assume that you have to call someone, quote unquote, a mentor in order for them to be your mentor. And, you set up sessions and you sit down and you talk to them. And I've never had that experience. Maybe it was just the pace at which we all worked and the environments we were in. And it's really just about people that you admired and that I tried to emulate in a lot of ways of how they conducted themselves, both personally and in business. And I think that I've had two wonderful mentors, both of which everyone here knows, one being the late and great Charles King, and the other being the late and great Mike Robinson, who we've talked about here. And I was very fortunate at a young age to become friends and to have them as people that I looked up to and that were willing to take me under their wing. And, Charles was this larger than life, both of them were larger than life individuals who were just relentless in their values and how they saw the world. They were direct, they were fair, they were fun. They just exuded life in every way. And if I can have an iota of that in what I do and how I portray myself, then I figure it's success. And, I lost them both within a short period of time. And my husband as well had a very strong mentor, and he lost his mentor very early in his career. And I remember saying to Andre, I was like, what do we do? Like, these are these people we looked up to. And Andre had a really good point. And he was like, we're in our 30s at this point. He goes, at our age, we don't look to new mentors. We become the mentors. And I've really taken that seriously, of trying to be a model that other women or men in politics or in business can look up to and say, like, hey, I like the way she conducts herself. And to really take that responsibility. And you don't know who you're impacting in their life. And it goes back to my opening comment of don't be a jerk. I think that it rings true in every way and form. And I also think that we focus so much on mentorships, but I think the other thing we have to look at is just having a great group of friends and people that might be similar in career to you, that you can have open and honest conversations with. I have an extraordinary group of women in particular that are professional mothers, mid-career, that I feel I can have open and honest conversations about my feelings, my imposter syndrome, how I approach the world, challenges that I might be having, and having that ability to have a very honest conversation that's a friendship, but with like-minded people. And maybe that is mentorship by definition, but I look at it as just a strong group of people to have around you.
I was going to wrap up the episode by the podcast by thanking all three of you, but by also reminding us all to not be jerks. Because I think that is a really, really good reminder. And some of the people mentioned would point out there are occasions that I have been a jerk. I will revert to your comments about Mike and Charles. I did talk about Mike as one of my mentors in a previous edition of this podcast. And they lived life large was the best part about both of them. They're the only two human beings that have a booth at the Metropolitan Restaurant on Ottawa named after them. And that is because they earned it through consumption of red wine as well.
Yes.
And two great people. And you all mentioned some great one. I think we're great people. So I'm going to leave off here for now and thank the three of you. We're going to jump back on here with another episode here in a day or so about what's going on in Parliament, what's going on in politics, and what's going on in education. So we'll put you on the spot when we record that. But thank you all. It was a great discussion, and I hope some of our students, educators, and individuals around the country get a chance to listen to what you've said, because you all are true leaders in this country and have had an impact, as I said to start, in your communities and in your political parties that you're all associated with. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for listening to another episode of the EdUp Canada podcast. We release new episodes regularly, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when they are officially out. If you love this episode, please leave a 4- or 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts so that others can also discover how a set of skills can lead to success. Thanks for learning with us.